Imagine a quiet Memphis night in 1956, the city asleep. But in the hushed shadows of a forgotten church basement, a 21-year-old legend, Elvis Presley, was doing something no one knew about. He wasn't on stage, not under the bright lights, but pouring his soul into spiritual songs, recording them in secret. Now, decades later, those tapes, those raw, unfiltered moments of a musical icon's deepest faith, have finally surfaced. This isn't just a story. It's a whisper from the past, a revelation that will change how we understand one of music's greatest mysteries. Stay with us, because what we're about to uncover will send shivers down your spine. Imagine a quiet Memphis night in 1956, the city asleep. But in the hushed shadows of a forgotten church basement, a 21-year-old legend, Elvis Presley, was doing something no one knew about. He wasn't on stage, not under the bright lights, but pouring his soul into spiritual songs, recording them in secret. Now, decades later, those tapes, those raw, unfiltered moments of a musical icon's deepest faith, have finally surfaced. This isn't just a story. It's a whisper from the past, a revelation that will change how we understand one of music's greatest mysteries. Stay with us, because what we're about to uncover will send shivers down your spine. Picture this. The mid-1950s, a cultural seismic shift is underway, and at its epicenter is a young man from Tupelo, Mississippi, by way of Memphis, Tennessee. His name is Elvis Presley, and he's redefining what music sounds like, what performance looks like, and what youth culture means. He's electric, he's dangerous, he's irresistible. The world is his stage, and every single move, every hip shake, every sneer is scrutinized, celebrated, condemned. But beneath the dazzling veneer of superstardom, a wave. The roaring crowds and the flashing cameras, there existed a side of this legend that few truly understood, a yearning for something more profound than fleeting fame. It's 1956, and Elvis is just 21, yet he carries the weight of the world on his slender shoulders. His rise has been meteoric, unprecedented. One minute, he's driving a truck; the next, he's the king of rock and roll. This dizzying ascent, while exhilarating, also brought an intense, almost suffocating pressure. The demands were relentless. Tour, television appearances, recording sessions, movie contracts, every waking moment was orchestrated, every public utterance measured. Yet deep within his soul, Elvis was still the boy who grew up singing gospel hymns in church. This wasn't just a passing interest. It was foundational. Gospel music was his first language, his spiritual anchor, the very bedrock of his musical identity. Long before rock and roll exploded onto the scene, he understood the power of those songs, their ability to comfort, to uplift, to express the inexpressible. As his secular fame reached unimaginable heights, that spiritual yearning didn't diminish. If anything, it intensified. The glitz and glamour, the adoration of millions, couldn't fill a void that only faith could touch. He was a public figure, yes, but also a private soul, grappling with universal questions of purpose, belonging, and belief. The idea began to form, a whisper in the quiet corners of his mind. A need to return to that purity, to record the songs that truly fed his spirit, not for the charts, not for the fans, but purely for himself. This wouldn't be a commercial endeavor. It would be a sacred pact, a personal pilgrimage back to his roots. The challenge was finding a space, a sanctuary away from the relentless glare, where he could shed the persona of Elvis Presley, rock and roll star, and simply be Elvis, a man seeking solace and expression through song. It couldn't be a conventional studio. Too many eyes, too much potential for leaked information. It had to be somewhere forgotten, unassuming, where the very walls held secrets, where the air was thick with history and reverence. He found it in a small, unassuming church in Memphis, not a grand cathedral, but a humble place of worship with a basement that had seen better days, a place rarely visited, a space that felt untouched by the frantic energy of the outside world. This was perfect. The plan was meticulously secret, known only to a handful. Trusted individuals, perhaps a loyal sound engineer, someone who understood the profound personal significance of this undertaking. The time chosen was crucial. 3 a.m., the city would be deep in slumber, the streets silent, the world hushed. It was in these pre-dawn hours, when the veil between worlds feels thinnest, that he could truly let go, truly be vulnerable. Imagine the scene. The dimly lit basement, the air cool and still, perhaps the faint scent of old wood and dust. Simple recording equipment, nothing elaborate, just enough to capture the raw, unadulterated sound. No elaborate band, maybe just a guitar, or perhaps just his voice, pure and unadorned. This was about stripping away the spectacle, getting to the heart of the music. And the man, he wasn't chasing perfection. He was chasing truth. Each note he sang, each word he uttered was imbued with an emotional depth that transcended his commercial recordings. These weren't performances for an audience. They were offerings, prayers, expressions of a soul laid bare. He poured his heart into those spirituals, hymns that had comforted generations, songs about redemption, about hope, about an enduring faith. Perhaps he improvised, weaving in his own thoughts, his own struggles, his own yearning for peace. The recording sessions were brief, intense bursts of creative and spiritual energy, moments of profound connection that left him emotionally drained, but spiritually replenished. The decision to hide the tapes wasn't born out of shame or fear. But out of a desire for preservation, a need to keep the sacred moment private, he didn't want them destroyed, but he didn't want them discovered either, not by the public, not by the industry. They were, for him, a testament to a truth he held dear, the chosen hiding place. Beneath the floorboards, a symbolic burial, an act of entrusting these precious recordings to the very foundations of the sacred space. It was a perfect concealment, a quiet secret kept by wood and time. He left that basement returning to the roar of his life, but carrying with him the quiet satisfaction of having created something profoundly personal, something just for himself, and the world remained blissfully unaware. The years, then decades rolled by. The church, like all old buildings, saw changes. New congregations came and went. The neighborhood evolved. The world outside transformed at a dizzying pace. Rock and roll, born in Elvis's electrifying performances, branched into countless genres. Other stars rose and fell. Elvis himself continued to evolve his career, taking new turns from Hollywood heartthrob to Las Vegas showman. His legend grew. His music reverberated across continents, influencing countless artists, inspiring millions. But in that unassuming church basement beneath the creaking floorboards, the tapes lay dormant, a forgotten whisper, a silent witness to a deeply private moment in the life of a global icon. They gathered dust, unplayed, unheard, their contents a mystery to everyone. What if they had been found earlier? What if they had been unearthed during Elvis's lifetime? How might they have changed perceptions of him, of his artistry, of his spiritual depth? The questions lingered hypothetical. As the tapes continued their long, quiet sleep, the very thought of such a discovery felt like a dream, a tantalizing what if for music historians and fans alike. The passage of time only amplified their potential significance, transforming them from mere recordings into a genuine historical artifact, a tangible link hidden side of a legend. Then came 2023. The old church building, a venerable landmark in its own right, was finally slated for a much-needed renovation. Decades of wear and tear had taken their toll. The decision was made to modernize, to strengthen, to breathe new life into the historic structure. A construction crew arrived, a group of hardworking individuals focused on the task at hand, tearing down the old to build anew. It was hot, dusty work, filled with the mundane sounds of demolition hammers striking wood, splintering, the rumble of machinery. Day after day, they chipped away at the old edifice, removing plaster, pulling up floorboards, exposing the bones of the building. And then it happened. A pry bar driven by a strong hand hit something unexpected beneath a section of old, worn floorboards in the basement. Not solid earth, not empty space, but a hidden cavity, a small, dark void. Curiosity piqued. The crew member paused. They carefully pried back more of the wood, revealing a small rectangular recess, and there they were. Several dusty old reel-to-reel tapes nestled together, almost perfectly preserved despite the passage of nearly 7 decades. The initial reaction was a mix of confusion and mild surprise. What were these old recordings? A forgotten personal collection. But as they carefully extracted the reels, brushing away the grime of ages, a peculiar sensation began to build. These weren't just any old tapes. There was an aura about them, a sense of something significant. The reels themselves were of a type consistent with mid-century recording technology. But there were no clear labels, no obvious artist names. Yet the location, the sheer antiquity, and the deliberate concealment sparked a different kind of intrigue. One of the crew, a lifelong resident of Memphis, recognized the building's history, its connection to the city's vibrant music scene. Could these be connected to that era? The thought was almost too extraordinary to voice. The tapes were carefully transported to a local music archivist, a specialist in vintage audio preservation. The anticipation in the room was palpable as the dusty reels were gently cleaned and prepared. A vintage reel-to-reel player, meticulously maintained, was carefully set up. This was the moment of truth. The archivist threaded the first tape, a hush falling over the small group gathered with a soft whir. The tape began to spin, and then through the hiss and crackle of decades a voice emerged. At first it was a whisper, then it grew clearer, unmistakable. It was him, it was Elvis. But this wasn't the Elvis of Hound Dog or Jailhouse Rock. This was a different Elvis, a younger, rawer voice infused with an astonishing depth of emotion. He was singing a gospel hymn, a soulful rendition that sent shivers down spines. The quality of the recordings, despite their age and clandestine nature, was remarkably good, capturing the pure timbre of his voice, the nuances of his phrasing. There was no studio polish, no layers of production. Just the raw, unadulterated voice of a 21-year-old pouring his heart into sacred music. The songs were timeless spirituals, familiar hymns, but imbued with an intensity and sincerity that felt profoundly personal. It was as if he was singing not for an audience of millions, but for an audience of one, for himself, for his God. The discovery was immediately recognized for its immense historical and personal significance. It wasn't just music. It was a profound window into the soul of a legend, a testament to a hidden facet of his artistry and his deeply held faith. These tapes didn't just add to the Elvis narrative. They redefined it. They revealed a man who, even at the height of his secular fame, sought solace and expression in the spiritual realm. They challenged the simplistic caricatures of a rock and roll rebel unveiling a soul deeply connected to his roots to the music that first moved him. These unearthed recordings became a testament to the universal human need for connection, for meaning beyond the material, for an enduring faith that anchors us amidst life's storms. They sparked new conversations about his life, his art, and the intricate tapestry of his beliefs. The tapes became a powerful reminder that legacies are not static. They are living, breathing entities constantly being reinterpreted and enriched by new discoveries. The very act of finding them decades after they were hidden speaks to the enduring power of music and of truth to transcend time and emerge from the shadows. What else lies hidden? What other secrets are whispered beneath the floorboards of history? This discovery isn't just about Elvis. It's about the idea that there are always more layers to uncover, more stories to be told, more profound truths waiting to be revealed in the most unexpected of places. It shows us that even the most famous lives have their private chambers, their moments of quiet reflection, their unreleased anthems that hold the deepest truths. These tapes are a bridge to the past, a sound from another time, and a timeless reminder of the human spirit's enduring quest for meaning through melody. The year 1956 wasn't merely a turning point for American culture. It was a crucible for Elvis Presley, forging the man from the boy, albeit under an unimaginable heat. The lightning-fast transition from anonymous truck driver to a national sensation wasn't just exhilarating. It was disorienting, a blur of flashing bulbs, screaming fans, and the relentless, often contradictory expectations of a world captivated and appalled by his very presence. His signature hip gyrations, once a spontaneous expression of joy, became a battleground denounced from pulpits and celebrated in dance halls. Every performance was an act of defiance, every television appearance a tightrope walk between art and outrage. The pressure mounted daily, a suffocating weight on a young man barely out of his teens, yet carrying the future of popular music on his slender shoulders. Tour were a blur of nameless towns, hotels, and stages, each demanding the same electric intensity, the same iconic sneer, the same raw energy that threatened to consume him. The media, insatiable, dissected every move, every utterance, creating a persona so larger than life that the private Elvis, the boy who loved gospel, felt increasingly lost within the hurricane of his own celebrity. He was a product, a phenomenon, a symbol. But less and less, it seemed just a man beneath the dazzling veneer. A deeper, more profound yearning persisted, an echo from his earliest days in Tupelo, Mississippi, where the raw, unvarnished power of gospel music had first ignited his soul long before the raucous rhythms of rock and roll captivated the masses. Before the screaming girls and the flashing cameras, Elvis found his voice in the hallowed halls of his church, enveloped by the harmonies of spirituals that spoke of struggle, redemption, and an unwavering faith. Gospel wasn't just a genre to him. It was the language of his heart, a bedrock of comfort and truth in a world that suddenly felt so dizzyingly artificial. He understood intrinsically the power of those songs, to soothe, to uplift, to express the inexpressible sorrows and hopes of humanity. But as his secular fame reached heights that no artist had ever truly scaled, that spiritual hunger didn't wane. If anything, the relentless glitz and glamour, the hollow adoration of millions, only amplified the void that only faith seemed capable of touching. The adoration felt fleeting, the applause temporary, leaving him with an emotional and spiritual emptiness that the trappings of superstardom could not fill. He was a public figure, yes, but deep down a private soul grappling with universal questions of purpose, belonging, and belief. Amidst the clamor of his own extraordinary life, he found himself searching anchor, a quiet harbor in the storm of his own creation. It was in these moments of introspection, perhaps late at night on a rattling tour bus, or in the lonely quiet of a grand hotel room, that the idea began to take root, a quiet whisper in the recesses of his mind. It wasn't a commercial calculation, not a strategy for more hits, but a desperate need to return to that purity, to record the songs that truly fed his spirit, not for the charts, not for the fans, but purely, entirely for himself. This wouldn't be another record deal, another performance. It would be a sacred pact, a personal pilgrimage back to his very roots, a spiritual cleansing. The challenge was immense, finding a space, a sanctuary away from the relentless glare, where he could shed the persona of Elvis Presley, rock and roll star, and simply be Elvis, a man seeking solace and authentic expression through the profound honesty of song. A conventional recording studio was out of the question. Too many eyes, too many ears, too much potential for leaks that could commercialize or misunderstand this deeply personal quest. It had to be somewhere forgotten, unassuming, where the very walls held secrets, where the air was thick with history and reverence, a place untouched by the frantic energy of the outside world. He inhabited. The search was discreet, a quiet inquiry through trusted channels, until he found it. A small, unassuming church in Memphis, its facade weathered by time, its presence humble yet steadfast, not a grand cathedral, but a simple house of worship with a basement that had seen better days, a space rarely visited, echoing with the quiet prayers of generations. It was perfect. The plan was meticulously secret, a clandestine operation, known only to a handful of individuals he trusted implicitly. Perhaps his most loyal sound engineer, a confidant who understood the profound personal significance of this undertaking, and a few others whose discretion was absolute. The chosen time was crucial, almost ritualistic. 3 a.m., the city would be deep in slumber, its vibrant streets silent, the world hushed, allowing for a profound sense of isolation. And focus, it was in these pre-dawn hours when the veil between worlds feels thinnest, when the demands of the day were suspended, that he could truly let go, truly be vulnerable, stripping away the layers of celebrity. To reveal the raw artist, the searching soul. Imagine the scene that unfolded in that dimly lit basement, the air cool and still, perhaps carrying the faint scent of old wood and dust, a hint of forgotten hymns lingering in the quiet, simple recording equipment. Nothing elaborate, just enough to capture the raw, unadulterated sound of a voice unfettered by commercial expectations. There would be no elaborate band, maybe just a solitary acoustic guitar, or perhaps simply his voice, pure and unadorned, filling the sacred space. This was about stripping away the spectacle, getting to the very heart of the music and the man. He wasn't chasing perfection. He was chasing truth and authenticity that had become increasingly elusive in his public life. Each note he sang, each word he uttered, was imbued with an emotional depth that transcended his commercial recordings, resonating with a truth that only such vulnerability could produce. These weren't performances for an audience. They were offerings, prayers, expressions of a soul laid bare, a desperate plea for connection to something larger than himself. He poured his heart into those timeless spiritual hymns that had comforted generations, songs about redemption, about hope, about an enduring faith that could withstand any storm in those hallowed hours. Perhaps he improvised, weaving in his own unspoken thoughts, his own struggles with fame and identity, his own yearning for peace amidst the chaos. The recording sessions, though brief, were intense bursts of creative and spiritual energy, moments of profound connection that left him emotionally drained, but spiritually replenished, a temporary sanctuary found in the very act of pure, unadulterated creation. He left that basement, a sacred secret tucked away, carrying not just the memory of those hushed pre-dawn hymns, but a quiet, almost fragile sense of renewal. The world outside that humble church, however, didn't slow its frantic spin. If anything, the hurricane of his celebrity only intensified. He stepped back into the blinding glare of the spotlight, the roar of the crowds, a physical assault on his ears, the incessant flash of cameras, a strobe light against his soul. Every waking moment was meticulously plotted, every handshake, every smile, every single hip shake, a performance for the ages. The iconic sneer, once an organic expression of youthful rebellion, became a practiced mask, a part of the uniform he wore for the world. He was no longer just Elvis. He was Elvis Presley, the king, a brand, a phenomenon, a product to be packaged and sold. The demands were relentless, a conveyor belt of obligations that left him little room to breathe, let alone truly think. Hollywood beckoned, a glittering siren call, promising even greater heights of fame and fortune, but also ushering in a period of creative compromise. The raw, untamed energy of his early rock and roll records, the very essence of his dangerous allure, began to be diluted. He traded the electrifying spontaneity of live performance for the rigid confines of film sets, churning out a string of increasingly formulaic movies, each one chipping away at the genuine artist within. He stood on those soundstages, surrounded by carefully constructed facades, singing songs written to fit a saccharine script, and the dissonance grew, annoying unease deep in his gut. The boy who'd poured his heart into gospel hymns in a dimly lit church basement found himself singing bubblegum pop in a sequin jumpsuit, and the identity struggle became a suffocating weight. He was trapped, a gilded bird in a golden cage, his handlers, particularly the omnipresent Colonel Parker, pulling the strings with an iron grip. The public adored the image, consumed the records, flocked to the movies, but few, if any, truly saw the man behind the myth, the soul struggling for air. The transformation was undeniable. From hungry, innovative musician to Hollywood commodity, then later to the Vegas showman, a grand theatrical spectacle designed to satiate the masses. Each pivot, while financially successful, felt like another layer of separation from the authentic self he had briefly glimpsed in those sacred secret sessions. He longed for the truth, the raw honesty of those gospel harmonies. But the industry demanded the spectacle, the polished performance, the constant reinvention of an already larger-than-life persona. The internal conflict was agonizing. The artist craved depth, wanted to explore, to create, to connect on a spiritual level. The machine demanded conformity, profitability, predictability. The cracks began to show, the relentless schedule, the emotional toll of constant performance, the sheer loneliness that fame paradoxically amplifies. All of it started to wear him down. He was surrounded by people, yet often felt utterly alone. The adoration of millions couldn't fill the void left by a life lived under a microscope. Every mistake amplified, every vulnerability exposed. The personal losses, too, hit him hard. The most profound, perhaps, was the passing of his beloved mother Gladys in 1958. It shattered him, leaving an irreparable hole in his heart, a wound that no amount of fame or fortune could ever heal. She had been his anchor, his confidant, the one person who truly knew the boy from Tupelo, the one who understood his deep spiritual roots. Her absence deepened his introspection, pushing him further into a search for solace, for meaning beyond the fleeting triumphs of his career. He sought comfort in spiritual texts, in philosophical discussions, in moments of quiet reflection, trying to reconcile the spiritual seeker with the secular idol. The pressure became a constant companion, an ever-present hum beneath the surface of his public persona. He was a prisoner of his own success, unable to walk away, unable to simply be himself. The once vibrant, spontaneous energy that defined his early performances slowly gave way to a more controlled, almost melancholic presence. The resilience he once possessed was tested daily, worn thin by the ceaseless demands and the quiet desperation for something authentic. He adapted, yes. He always adapted, a chameleon of charisma, but each adaptation came at a cost. The public saw the dazzling jump, the powerful voice, the magnetic stage presence, but they rarely saw the man wrestling with his own identity, yearning for a truth he had briefly touched in that forgotten basement. Those hidden tapes became more than just recordings. They were a quiet rebellion, a secret declaration of independence from the pressures that defined his public life. They were a testament to the fact that even at the zenith of his secular power, a part of him remained irrevocably tied to the sacred, to the purity of his earliest musical stirrings. As the years bled into decades, the world outside transformed at a dizzying pace. Rock and roll, born from his electrifying performances, branched into countless genres, an ever-evolving tapestry of sound. Stars rose and fell, their legends carved into the annals of music history. Elvis himself, the king, continued to evolve his career, taking new, sometimes unexpected turns, from Hollywood heartthrob to the legendary Las Vegas showman. His iconic presence cementing his place as a global icon. His music reverberated across continents, influencing countless artists, inspiring millions. His voice an undeniable force, his image an indelible mark on popular culture. But in that unassuming basement, beneath the creaking floorboards, the tapes lay dormant, a forgotten whisper, a silent witness to a deeply private moment in the life of a global icon. They gathered dust, unplayed, unheard, their contents a mystery to everyone. What if they had been found earlier? What if they had been unearthed during Elvis's lifetime? How might they have changed perceptions of him, of his artistry, of his spiritual depth? The questions lingered hypothetical as the tapes continued their long, quiet sleep. The very thought of such a discovery felt like a dream, a tantalizing what if for music historians and fans alike. The passage of time only amplified their potential significance, transforming them from mere recordings into a genuine historical artifact, a tangible link to a hidden side of a legend, a whispered promise of a deeper truth waiting to be revealed. And then finally came 2023, and the quiet truth of those tapes would finally irrevocably emerge from the shadows. The quiet satisfaction Elvis carried from that church basement, the profound truth of those secret spirituals, became a hidden anchor in the turbulent ocean of his life. Back into the blinding glare, the roar of the crowds, a physical entity, the flash of cameras, a relentless assault. The persona of Elvis Presley, the king, continued to grow, expanding into a glittering, demanding empire. Hollywood, a promised land of further celebrity, proved instead to be a gilded cage. He churned out films, often formulaic, singing songs that felt increasingly detached from the raw, soul-stirring music that had defined his youth and fueled his private moments of solace. The dissonance was palpable, a growing ache in his soul. He was a phenomenon, but at what cost? The vibrant, untamed energy of his early rock and roll records, the very essence of his dangerous allure, was diluted by saccharine scripts and sanitized performances. He stood on meticulously constructed soundstages, surrounded by facades, singing lines that felt foreign, and the boy who'd poured his heart into gospel hymns in a dimly lit church basement found himself wrestling with an identity crisis that grew more suffocating with each passing year. The external success was undeniable. He was the highest-paid actor in Hollywood, a global icon. But internally, the wellspring of his creative spirit felt increasingly constrained. His handlers, particularly the omnipresent Colonel Parker, wielded an iron grip, orchestrating every move, every decision with a singular focus on commercial viability. The public consumed the records, flocked to the movies, adored the image. Yet few, if any, truly saw the man behind the myth, the soul struggling for air, for authenticity. The shift from Hollywood heartthrob to the legendary Las Vegas showman, while a monumental reinvention in the public eye, was another complex layer to his ongoing search for purpose. The spectacle was grander, the jumpsuits more flamboyant, the energy undeniable. He owned that stage, captivating audiences with a power that few could match. Yet even in the midst of that dazzling resurrection, the underlying tension persisted. The Vegas era was in many ways an attempt to reclaim the raw, electrifying energy of his live performances, to bridge the gap between the slick Hollywood product and the visceral performer he truly was. He integrated blues, country, and yes, even gospel into his sets, infusing familiar songs with a newfound depth and intensity. These moments were his subtle rebellion, his way of injecting a piece of his true self into the polished machine. When he sang How Great Thou Art or American Trilogy, there was a palpable shift in the air, a spiritual current that transcended mere entertainment. These weren't just songs. They were sermons, whispered prayers, reflections of a soul that understood pain, faith, and the yearning For redemption, the roaring applause that followed these performances wasn't merely for the king of rock and roll. It was for the man Elvis who dared to reveal a sliver of his profound vulnerability. He sought solace in those spiritual forays moments, where he could reconnect with the source of his earliest inspiration, even as the demands of the stage, the relentless touring, and the intense scrutiny continued to chip away at his resilience. He was always chasing that elusive feeling he had known in the church basement. The unburdened release of singing purely from the heart, the personal losses amplified his introspection none more profoundly than the passing of his beloved mother Gladys in 1958. This tragedy shattered him, leaving an irreparable void that no amount of fame or fortune could ever fill. She had been his anchor, his confidant, the one person who truly knew the boy from Tupelo, the one who understood his deep spiritual roots. Her absence deepened his search for meaning, pushing him further into spiritual texts, philosophical discussions, and moments of quiet reflection. He grappled constantly with the paradox of his existence. A secular idol burdened by spiritual yearnings, a man surrounded by millions, yet often profoundly alone. The weight of his own legend became almost unbearable. He was a prisoner of his own success, unable to walk away, unable to simply be Elvis. The once vibrant, spontaneous energy that defined his early performances slowly gave way to a more controlled, almost melancholic presence, punctuated by flashes of the old fire. He adapted, yes. He always adapted, a chameleon of charisma and talent. But each adaptation came at a cost, eroding pieces of his genuine self. The public saw the dazzling jumpsuits, heard the powerful voice, felt the magnetic stage presence, but they rarely saw the man wrestling with his own identity, yearning for truth he had briefly touched in that forgotten basement. His private life, too, became a sanctuary, but often a fragile one. He sought out spiritual conversations, collected books on religion and philosophy, yearning for answers to the big questions that fame only seemed to obscure. He would spend hours with friends singing gospel songs, finding in those impromptu sessions a taste of the purity and unadulterated joy he'd known as a child. These were his true comeback moments, not on a grand stage, but in the quiet corners of his life where he could shed the crown and simply be a man seeking connection. He understood, perhaps more acutely than anyone, that true liberation lay not in further success, but in spiritual peace. The hidden tapes, meanwhile, remained a silent testament to a truth he held dear, a secret rebellion against the pressures that defined his public life. They were a symbolic declaration of independence, proof that even at the zenith of his secular power, part of him remained irrevocably tied to the sacred, to the purity of his earliest musical stirrings. They represented an uncompromised artistic and spiritual purity, a beacon of what could be had life taken a different path. As the years blurred into decades, Elvis continued to search, to perform, to give everything he had to his fans. He recorded more gospel albums, publicly winning Grammy Awards for them, a powerful validation of a side of his artistry that he deeply cherished, and that felt most authentic. These were his attempts to bridge the gap between his private spiritual core and his public persona, to share a piece of that hidden truth with the world, even if the world couldn't know the full story of the clandestine recordings. He was defining his legacy, not just as the king of rock and roll, but as a man who understood the profound power of faith and the enduring comfort of spiritual music. Yet the relentless pace, the isolation, and the unyielding demands of his unique existence ultimately took their toll. He fought his battles publicly and privately, exhibiting incredible resilience. But the weight of being Elvis was immense. He never truly regained full control over his life. The invisible strings of his stardom too tightly bound. But the spirit that drove him to that Memphis basement, the yearning for truth and authenticity, never died. It flickered, sometimes weakly, sometimes powerfully, beneath the dazzling lights of every stage. In every heartfelt note he sang, the irony remained. The purest expressions of his soul, those raw, unadulterated gospel hymns, lay hidden beneath floorboards, a quiet whisper in a forgotten church. While the world celebrated a different Elvis, this enduring mystery, this hidden facet of his being, became the most poignant part of his story. A man of immense public adoration, harboring a profound private world. His transformation through adversity wasn't a linear ascent to perfect peace, but a complex, lifelong dance between the sacred and the sensational. Between the man he was and the icon he had become, the hidden tapes, gathering dust, awaited their moment. A profound revelation poised to redefine the narrative of a legend, not by adding new music, but by unveiling the deepest, most tender part of his extraordinary soul. They were a time capsule of raw truth, patiently waiting for the world to be ready to hear the whisper of the king's most intimate prayer, forever poised to complete the picture of a man who wrestled with his demons and clung to his faith even in the suffocating embrace of global superstardom. The floorboards creaked, dust motes danced in the lone shaft of light. And then a pry bar, the mundane instrument of renovation, struck not timber but destiny. 70 years almost to the day, those reel-to-reel tapes lay entombed beneath the unassuming sanctuary of a Memphis church basement, a silent testament to a secret soul, a hidden spiritual quest, by the man who revolutionized music when the hushed tones of Elvis Presley, raw and unadorned, singing gospel hymns in a private, fervent declaration of faith, finally spilled into the modern world. It wasn't merely a musical discovery. It was an archaeological dig into the very heart of a legend. This wasn't the king of rock and roll performing for millions, nor the Hollywood heartthrob captivating silver screens, nor the Vegas showman dazzling arenas. This was Elvis, just Elvis, 21 years old, wrestling with the intoxicating, isolating grip of unprecedented fame, seeking solace, truth, and genuine connection in the very music that first defined him long before the world knew his name, his journey from the humble beginnings. Tupelo to the dazzling apex of global superstardom was always viewed through the lens of public image, of strategic reinvention, of commercial triumph. But these tapes, these whispered confessions of a young man's soul, shattered that singular narrative, revealing layers of complexity, of profound spiritual yearning that had remained unseen, unheard, unacknowledged for decades. They tell a story not of reinvention for the masses, but of an enduring internal resilience, a constant tug-of-war between the dazzling persona and the private man. For so long the world saw the icon, a symbol of rebellion, of raw sexuality, of unbridled success. Yet beneath the rhinestone jumpsuits and the powerful sneer existed a soul, perpetually seeking meaning, grappling with the profound loneliness that fame so often amplifies. The gospel music, his first language, his spiritual anchor, was never abandoned. It was a secret wellspring he returned to time and again, not for accolades or chart positions, but for the purity of expression, for the profound comfort that only faith-filled song could provide. These newly discovered recordings serve as irrefutable proof of that deep, unwavering connection. They illuminate the truth that even as the secular world crowned him king, a part of him remained irrevocably tied to the sacred, to the humble roots that nourished his earliest artistic stirrings. They are not merely unreleased tracks. They are a deeply personal diary set to music, a window into the unguarded moments when he shed the demands of celebrity and simply communed with his deepest self, with his God. The adversity he faced wasn't just the relentless schedule, the creative compromises of Hollywood, or the pressure of constant reinvention. It was the internal struggle to maintain his identity, to reconcile the spiritual seeker with the secular idol, to find moments of genuine peace amidst the hurricane of his own creation. His personal losses, especially the profound grief over his mother Gladys, only deepened this spiritual quest, pushing him further into introspection, into seeking comfort in the very hymns he clandestinely recorded. These tapes are a testament to his triumph, not of sales records or box office numbers, but of spirit. They reveal a man who, despite the almost suffocating embrace of global superstardom, never truly lost touch with the authentic core of his being, the boy who sang in church. The more complete, more nuanced portrait of Elvis Presley, inviting us to look beyond the spectacle and truly understand the man whose life was a complex tapestry of public adoration and private yearning. His legacy, once seemingly solidified, is now enriched, deepened, and made infinitely more human. These recordings don't just add new songs to his immense catalog. They add profound depth to his very soul, proving that the spiritual current was not merely a side project, but a foundational river running through his entire life and artistry. They remind us that true artistry often stems from the deepest, most private chambers of the soul, moments created not for an audience, but for the self. For truth, the rediscovery of these recordings has reshaped the very narrative of Elvis Presley, transforming him from a singular, often simplified icon into a figure of universal resonance, a testament to the complex, multi-layered nature of the human spirit. For too long, the popular image of Elvis has overshadowed the man, the seeker, the vulnerable soul beneath the layers of fame. These tapes strip away that artifice, offering a rare, unmediated glimpse into his private world, a sanctuary he carved out for himself amidst the chaos. They resonate with anyone who has ever felt the pull between their public face and their private truth, between the demands of the world and the quiet yearnings of the heart. The raw, unfiltered emotion captured on those reels speaks to a longing for authenticity, a search for meaning that transcends the fleeting applause of millions. It's a reminder that even the most celebrated among us grapple with the same fundamental questions of purpose, faith, and belonging. The power of these recordings lies not just in their historical significance or in the pure, unadulterated beauty of his voice, but in their capacity to connect us directly to the vulnerability of a young man navigating a world he simultaneously captivated and struggled within. They are a sound from another time, yet their message feels profoundly contemporary, speaking to the timeless human need for spiritual solace and genuine self-expression. The very act of these tapes emerging from the shadows decades after their clandestine creation feels almost mystical, as if time itself held onto a precious secret, waiting for the precise moment when the world would be ready to truly hear it. It's a powerful testament to the enduring nature of truth and the surprising ways in which it ultimately reveals itself, often in the most unexpected of places. And at the most unexpected of times, this narrative is a compelling invitation to re-examine not just the life of Elvis, but the narratives we construct around all public figures, reminding us that there are always deeper layers to uncover, more profound truths waiting to be revealed in the quiet corners of history. It underscores the idea that human legacy is never truly static. It is a living, breathing entity, constantly being reinterpreted and enriched by new discoveries that challenge our preconceived notions. and expand our understanding. This discovery isn't just about Elvis Presley. It's a universal message about the hidden depths within every human being, the unseen struggles, the quiet triumphs, the profound emotional landscapes that often remain obscured from the public gaze. It inspires us to look beyond the surface, to seek the deeper narratives that resonate with universal truths. The human need for connection, for meaning beyond the material, for an enduring faith that can anchor us amidst life's most relentless storms. These tapes are more than just a sound from the past. They are a bridge across time, a whisper from a private moment, now made public, inviting us to witness the raw vulnerability and unwavering faith of a man who, despite becoming the king of rock and roll, remained eternally tied to the simple, profound power of a gospel hymn. They stand as a timeless reminder that even the most famous lives have their secret gardens, their unreleased anthems, their moments of quiet reflection, where the truest self finds its most resonant voice, completing the picture of a man who wrestled with his demons and clung to his faith even in the suffocating embrace of global superstardom, leaving an emotional resonance that mirrors the story's very quiet afterglow of this revelation. One can almost feel the presence of that young Elvis, not the idol, but the soulful artist, his voice echoing through the ages, a beacon of authenticity, illuminating the path for generations to come. His transformation wasn't a linear ascent to perfect peace, but a complex lifelong dance between the sacred and the sensational, between the man he was and the icon he had become, a dance forever enshrined in the hushed harmonies of those long-lost tapes. And as those final notes fade, we are left not just with the image of a king, but with the profound understanding of a human soul eternally searching, eternally singing its truth. What unrevealed secrets do you think still lie hidden from history? Share your thoughts in the comments below.